What is up? If you guys missed the live stream from last, I think it was like Wednesday or Thursday, something like that. Who knows? I'm just spitballing here. We made an Ancient One deck list because, funny story, I was working on a script for a video that was like designing my dream commander on like one of those custom MTG card websites. And in the script, I came to the conclusion that my dream commander would be Dimir, very efficiently costed, fill the graveyards, and be based around reanimation. And then they went and printed this dude, who was like eerily close to the card I had designed. So I scrapped that whole video and just made a deck around this guy because he's going to be my top deck. He's going to be the deck that I could go all in on. I'm very excited about him. I was talking to my friends about him when he got spoiled, and they were like, he's insane. He's very good. And I'm like, he's okay. He's not a normal god. He doesn't get shuffled back in. He doesn't go on top. He doesn't go into your hand. He doesn't have indestructible. He's super easily killable and has a giant target on his head. He's okay. And then I looked at his price yesterday, and he was 25 bucks. Do not think that's going to hold. I think like $8 is probably where this dude's going to sit at. Right now, he's 18, so he's already dropped like $7. But I digress. If you weren't a part of that stream, I'll just cue you in, and we'll do a little sum up here of the deck that we ended up building. This is my dream deck. For all intents and purposes, it is every single card in this deck I look at and I get excited to play with. I'm like, awesome. That's going to be super fun to play with. So if we want to hop into it, let's go. We'll just go in order, I guess. That's probably the best way we can do it. We've got Commander Interaction. That's the only thing that's the only name I could really come up with because Training Grounds didn't fit anywhere else. Like, it's not really mana ramp. There's like 3 other creatures with activated costs, so it does help there. But the main thing is it makes our commanders draw 1 and discard 1, cost only a blue and a black. And I guess this is as good a time any to read the commander. Blue and a black for an 8/8 with Descend 8. The Ancient One can't attack or block unless there are 8 or more permanent cards in your graveyard. And you can pay 2, a black and a blue, draw a card, then discard a card. When you discard a card this way, target player mills cards equal to its mana value. It doesn't even have to be an opponent. Like, you can mill yourself with that too, which is great. So, Training Grounds will make that ability cost 2, which becomes very spammable. And in this deck, you'll probably be able to mill somebody at that rate. So Deck Dissection was a kit that I specifically asked for on the stream because I really like Praetor's Grasp. 1 and 2 black for a sorcery. Search your opponent's library for a card and exile it face down. Then that player shuffles their library, and as long as it's exiled, you can play that card. You can't use mana or any color, but you can play the card. So if you get artifacts and stuff, you're probably good to go. But I really like Praetor's Grasp, and I wanted a deck to utilize running it, and I think this deck's kind of cool because the Ancient One's going to be ripping apart everybody's deck by milling, and then these 3 cards will kind of pick apart the pieces that are left, hopefully, to try to like scavenge the win. So there's Praetor's Grasp. We got Life's Finale. That's a board wipe that also rips 3 creatures out of the player's graveyard, or out of the player's library into graveyard. So again, ripping out some of their win cons into grave, especially with the reanimation sub-themes, is really good. Bitter Ordeal is insane. This got recommended to me by, I can't remember their name, but they were in the chat. If I have the chat log, I'll put it up on the screen. Super good card. I didn't know this existed. It has an ability that this is the only card that it's on, which is super strange. 2 and a black for a sorcery. Search target player's library for a card and remove that card from the game. Then that player shuffles his or her library, and it has Gravestorm. And if you don't know what Gravestorm is, I don't blame you. It's the only card with it. It's really weird. When you play this spell, copy it for each permanent put into a graveyard this turn. You may choose new targets for the copies. This does not work with mill. I had a Rude Awakening. Someone commented on my daily card highlight, and they were like, unfortunately, it doesn't work with mill. Cards in the deck are permanent cards, not permanents. So when it says for each permanent that went to the graveyard, a permanent has to have already been in play. Permanent cards can be in your deck. Permanents have to have been in play. So after a board wipe, you can drop like a Life's Finale and then Bitter Ordeal. After you kill a couple things, after you swing with all your big things and they block with, let's say, like 6 creatures, you get 7 Bitter Ordeals. It could be worse. It still could be a lot worse. Yeah, it's still a great card. It's exactly what we want to be doing. Okay, so moving into card draw here. We're starting off with Morbid Opportunist. I just like this card. I think 3 mana for a card draw each turn if something dies is just crazy good value, especially in a Reanimator deck because we can get it back. Seems good. Mold Drifter, same thing, drawing 2 cards and then being able to reanimate it. Notion Rain and Pilfered Plans, Surveil 2 and Mill 2, and then Draw 2, respectively. So both really good in this deck. They fill the graveyard, they draw you cards. It's good. Ponder, I put it in card draw. It's not really card draw. It's more of like card filtering. But with the amount that it does, it essentially feels like you did a good card draw spell. So I put it in here. Rhystic Study is just great. Don't really have to go in on that one. Sign in Blood, a classic. Toothy Imaginary Friend I actually really like. I didn't know this card existed. I found it the other day when I was researching this deck. And this actually wasn't a part of the stream. I added this post-stream because I wanted more creatures that drew cards. This originally had a lot more spells that drew cards, but then I was like, that doesn't interact with the reanimating theme, so I want like a little bit of a creature package that draws cards, so I added Morbid, Muldrifter, and Toothy. Toothy's really good though. 3 and a blue for a 1/1. Partners with whoever. Whenever you draw a card, put a 1/1 counter on Toothy, and then when it leaves the battlefield, draw a card for each 1/1 counter on it. That's a super good card. Like, very good. Because in this deck, it's fine if someone kills it, we just draw a bunch of cards. Even if they exile it, we draw a bunch of cards. But especially if they kill it, we just reanimate it and then do it all over again. Because we're not going to be milling ourselves too much. We're going to be hitting other people with our commander. Most of our mill hits our opponents. So our decks will probably be pretty full. So drawing a lot's not a bad thing. Treasure Cruise, it's just going to be really cheap with all the cards in the graveyard. We can probably get this out for like 1 mana post turn 5. And Windfall. Windfall pumps the graveyard full of cards. And it also helps with like the sub theme of milling. Because they just dump all their cards in hand and then draw probably 6 or 7. So that makes them go through a ton of their deck. We have 2 flash enablers just because chat brought up the point. Void Gaming, I think was their name, brought up Gandalf, the one that gives your stuff flash, like Friend of the Shire, I think. That ended up not making the cut, but it did spark the idea of running Leyline and Vedalken because the Gandalf gives all your sorceries flash, I think, and then I was like, well, at that point, there's no point in just not running the 2 cards that give everything flash, because it is really good. And then I was thinking, like, flash isn't always inherently good. It seems like it is, but then I'm like, some strategies, it's just like a hat on a hat. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like win more. In reanimation and in mill, flash seems like especially very good because we get to reanimate stuff at instant speed. We can block with it. We can get it at the end of their turn and then attack with it on our turn. All of our sorcery speed removal comes out at instant speed. All of our mill comes out at instant speed, which is super good because if someone like tutors or someone is like, hey, I'm going to draw 10 cards, you can be like, actually, first I'm going to mill you 10 cards just to be a real jerk about it. But I like it. I think reanimation and mill are prone to making flash even better than it already is. Next, we've got mill. So we've got a solid 10 cards that'll cause some significant mill to happen. We've got Captain Engathrod, who is 3 a blue and a black for a 3/6. Horrors you control have menace, which is sure. Whenever a horror you control deals combat damage to a player, that player mills that many cards. Sure, that's whatever. At the beginning of your end step, choose target artifact or creature card in an opponent's graveyard that was put there from their library this turn. Put it into the battlefield under your control. So this thing is mainly reanimation in here because this thing will perform a significant amount of reanimation with that 3rd ability. But it also is a 3/6 with menace that mills them 3 cards if it connects. So this can be milling, but it's mainly used for the reanimation side of it. I had this on one of my daily card highlights. It's 1 a blue and a black for a saga. The first chapter of it, each player mills 4. You guys actually pointed that out on the daily card highlight in the comments. It's not opponents, it's each player, so you also do 4. So it's 12 cards you get to look at. And then chapter 2 and chapter 3 lets you pick a card from among the 12 cards and then cast it until end of turn. So you get the 2 best cards out of 12 total cards on top, and you mill 12 cards off top for 3. It actually puts in a lot of work in here. Maddening Cacophony, of course. It just mills everybody half their deck if you kick it. Awesome. Someone in chat brought up Mesmeric Orb. I haven't heard of this card in forever. This was like a classic card. I used to run this in my original Teneb deck. 2 mana for an artifact that turns everything that untaps into a milled card. So anytime anyone untaps lands, creatures, anything, they mill a card. Super good. Mind Grind was one of the first mill cards that popped into my head on the stream, just because I remember this card being very good. I don't remember this card doing each opponent, but I'm super glad it does. It's X, a blue and a black for a sorcery. Each opponent reveals cards from the top of his or her library until they reveal X land cards, and then puts all revealed cards into the graveyard. X can't be 0. Even a Mind Grind for 5. That's every opponent has to mill until they hit 5 lands. Like, you could hit a crazy pocket where you're just... And then you have to hit land for it to end, so that implies that you're hitting non-lands, filling the graveyard, which in a Reanimator deck is exactly what we want to be doing. I love Mind Grind. It's great. Notion Rain, Pilfered Plans. Riddle Keeper is another one, kind of like Mesmeric Orb, that was in like the recesses of my brain, and I completely forgot it existed, but it's a super cool card. It's a Ghostly Prison that makes people mill 2 per creature attacking instead of paying 2, which I like a lot. I think that definitely seems good in here. Speaking of seems good in here, Sir Conrad is a cool source of mill just because you can pay 1 and a black, each player mills a card. If you've got Training Grounds out, it's 1 black, each player mills a card, which is actually pretty good. But he's mainly a win condition for his first ability. Whenever a creature dies or a creature card is put into the graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad deals 1 damage to each opponent. Yeah, that's a creature card hitting anyone's graveyard. That's any creature dying, even yours. And it turns into pings. This thing, paired with like the Maddening Cacophony, you can just kill someone almost immediately. We've got Tekanuma. It's just a good land. It's a swamp, essentially, that you can channel for 3 and a black and mill 3 cards, and then return a creature or planeswalker from your graveyard to your hand. Costs 1 less for each legendary. Just a land that mills us. That seems fine. That seems good. I needed protection in this deck. Not too much. I thought I needed more than I did, because in my head I was like, this commander has a target on their head. It's going to be killed a lot. We're going to need tons of protection to keep it safe. But then I'm like, last night I was thinking, I'm like, it does cost 2. Like, so I'm like, even if they do kill it 3 times, it's an 8-drop commander. You know what I mean? That's not that bad. So 3, I think, is fine. We run Diplomatic Immunity because I absolutely love Diplomatic Immunity. It's an aura that has Shroud and then gives the creature Shroud. So very hard to deal with. Lightning Greaves, of course, and then Swiftfoot Boots, of course, just 2 more forms of permanent protection. Then we're moving into Reanimation, which we've got 13 Reanimation spells. And they're, as you can see, pretty bombs. Animate Dead, 1 and a black, you enchant a creature in the graveyard, and then it comes into play under your control with a -1/-0 counter. And if anybody removes Animate Dead or removes the creature, it goes away. Breach the Multiverse is fantastic in here. 5 and 2 black. Each player mills 10 cards. Just that is like, yeah, sure. For each player, choose a creature or planeswalker card in that player's graveyard. Put those cards into the battlefield under your control. Then each creature you control becomes a Phyrexian in addition to its other types. The Phyrexian thing, whatever. But you mill 10 cards, and then you don't have to pick a creature or planeswalker from those 10 cards. It can be any creature or planeswalker from their graveyard, which is super good. Like, 7 mana to do all that is definitely a game winner. Captain Ngothrod, we already talked about him. Dance of the Dead is similar to Animate Dead, except it comes into play with a 1/1 counter on it, but it's tapped, and you have to pay 1 and a black to untap it during your untap step. So cheap reanimation at the cost of just having to pay 2 to untap it is fine. Dauthi Voidwalker is a really cool one. I think Dauthi Voidwalker might be in my top like 3 of my favorite Magic cards. I was thinking about it the other day. I absolutely love this thing. 2 black for a 3/2 with Shadow, and then all your opponent's stuff that hits the grave gets exiled, and then you can tap and sack Dauthi to play something for free that was exiled with it. And then since we're in reanimation, we can reanimate Dauthi, keep getting that going. Everything we're milling is getting exiled instead, so other people's graveyard decks don't really work, so it just is really good. Halo Forager, again, becoming one of my favorite cards. 1, a blue and a black for a 3/1 with flying. You can pay X when it comes into play, and then you get to rip an instant or a sorcery out of anyone's graveyard that cost X and play it without paying its mana cost. You technically did pay its mana cost, but it's really good. We can get our Breach the Multiverse again. We can get our Reanimate again. We can get, more importantly, anything from all the cards we've milled our opponents. So, super good. Junji was one I wasn't sure about. I wasn't sure if it was going to make the cut, and then I was like, it's a very good card, though, just because it's a good reanimation target that also reanimates and also fills the graveyard. And it has it's a 5/5 flying mana. It was just to the point where I was like, okay, it's stacked. Like, it's like, I gotta run this. Like, I was like, if it's a 4/4, I'll take it out. That's a 5/5. If they discard 1 card, I'll take it out. They discard 2 cards, man. And I'm like, if it has to like cost 2 or less, it's any non-dragon creature. I'm like, this card's very good. Junji is super good. It's a good threat, good reanimation, good target for reanimation. Just super, super solid. Lazav, he was actually the closest commander that existed to like my dream commander. He was low costed, he had protection, he was based around graveyards and reanimating. My only problem was he didn't fuel any of the graveyards being filled, And like a big thing in my head was like, I want my commander to kind of be the engine that's filling the graveyard. So then the Ancient one came out, and I was like, oh yes, that's perfect. Lorcan is absolutely going to win me so many games. This probably needs to go in the win con section as well. 5 and 2 black for a 6/6 flying. Whenever a creature is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, you may pay life equal to that creature's mana cost, and then it comes into play under your control. If a warlock you control would die, exile it instead. It returns the creatures as warlocks. I forgot to say that. But super good. We're gonna Maddening Cacophony and mill all you for half your decks, and then just cherry pick all the best creatures and pay life for them, and then just flood my board with a ton of huge, awesome creatures. Reanimate, of course. 1 black for a sorcery. Put a creature card from any graveyard into play under your control. You lose life equal to its mana cost. It's the namesake. You gotta run Reanimate. Sepulchral Primordial. Super good card as well. 5 and 2 black for a 5/4 Intimidate. When Sepulchral Primordial enters the battlefield, for each opponent, you may put a creature card from their graveyard into play under your control. Each opponent. 7 mana, you get a 5/4 Intimidate, and then 3 of the best things out of everyone's graveyard. Love it. It's way less than that too. It's like an 80-cent card. Shieldred Whispering One. Love this card. I've had this since I was like 16, and I've been trying to find the right Reanimator deck, and we found it, and it's in it, and we're good to go. 5 and 2 black for a 6/6 Swamp Walk. At the beginning of my upkeep, I return a creature card from my graveyard into play. At the beginning of opponent's upkeeps, they sacrifice a creature. It's also a 7-drop. That's another thing to bring up with this deck. The fact that Shieldred's a 7-drop, Sepulchral, Lorcan, Breach the Multiverse. There's so many big mana cost is because my commander will mill equal to the mana cost of the discarded card. So like running those big cards has like double value in here. Shieldred's great. The Scarab God, that was the second closest commander to what I wanted to do. It had the reanimation on it, which I was like, cool. And that's kind of what made me learn. I think I want the mill on the commander rather than the reanimation, because running the reanimation in the deck around the mill-based commander is more fun to me than pumping your deck full of mill when you have a reanimation commander. It just feels safer. It feels more fun to play. So I like it more. So reanimate these. These are our 10 creatures we're going to be trying to reanimate and win the game with. Captain Engothrod, that's just going to end games. Doom Whisperer is 5 for a 6/6 flying trample, and then you can pay 2 life and surveil 2, and you can just do that as much as you want. Fill the graveyard, 6/6 flying trample. You can reanimate all the stuff you just put in your graveyard with it. This card, nutty in here. Grey Merchant of Asphodel is a classic. Most people know what this one's got going for it. 3 and 2 black for a 2/4. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X, and you gain X, where X is your devotion to black. Just playing this once, you'll probably drain for a good 9+ damage, and then in a reanimator deck, we are going to it's going to die to some board wipes, to some removal, to combat, and then we'll just reanimate it and drain him again, and it's a super good way to bring home some games. Junji, Lorcan, Nazahal was one that someone brought up in the chat that I really liked. 5 and 2 blue for a 7/7. This spell can't be countered. You have no maximum hand size. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, draw a card. Hey, I probably said draw on all the other ones, but I caught it that time. Someone pointed out that I say draw with an L, and I can't look at myself the same. I keep rewatching videos, and I'm like, draw 7 cards, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I do say that. So whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, draw a card, and discard 3 cards. Exile Nazahal Primal Tide. Return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. So this is just a massive card that cannot be countered. That doesn't really matter because we're going to be reanimating it. But we have no maximum hand size, and we draw a ton of cards because all of our opponent's non-creature stuff is just card draw for us. And it has a way to protect itself by discarding 3 cards, which, guess what, is going to put stuff in our graveyard in Reanimator. Awesome. Noxious Gearhulk's just, again, it's kind of like a Sepulchral Primordial, where I'm like, I just like this card at this point. I think it's pretty decent. 4 and 2 black for a 5/4 Menace. When it comes into play, destroy another creature, and then you gain life equal to that creature's toughness. It's just good. You would think that the person whose creature you killed gained the life, but you do, which is fine with me, but it's interesting. Very good. Sepulchral, of course. Shieldred, of course. Someone else brought up the Haunt of Night Tower, which I've never ran, and I could not tell you why I have not ran this, because this is such a me card. 4 and 2 black for a 3/3 flying lifelink. Whenever the Haunt of Night Tower attacks, defending player discards a card. Whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, put a 1/1 counter on the Haunt of Night Tower. Oh. I'll play the Haunt. Yeah, and then I'll go ahead and put a Diplomatic Immunity on it. And then I'll mill half your graveyard, and you're dead. or your deck. Sorry. And it has lifelink. Like, so good. So there are a few cards we're trying to put into this deck, and just before I forget, I'm gonna throw it out right now. Portal to Phyrexia and Whip of Erebos are 2 cards that I'm looking for slots for. I just can't find a card to get out. So if you want to comment down below any cards you're seeing that you're like, you could probably take that out for that, please do. Okay, moving into counters and removal. For counter spells, we've got Counterspell and Venser. Just because Venser is a pseudo counterspell because it bounces spells back to their hand, but it can also do permanents. So in a reanimator deck, having the multi-use of like being able to reanimate it to get rid of something or get something out of the way so we can swing, it is useful. Someone brought up Cyber Conversion from the new Doctor Who set, and this thing is so good. 2 blue for an instant. Turn target creature face down. It's a 2/2 Cyberman. That works on commanders. Yeah, it's like the only way you can just get rid of a commander without it going to the command zone. So very good. Murderous Cut I just like because it can come out for 1 black to destroy a creature. I just think that's a solid card. Murderous Rider's very good. It's just 1 and 2 black for the adventure side, and it destroys a creature or a planeswalker and you lose 2, and then you can just play it as 1 and 2 black for a 2/3 lifelink. When it dies, put it on the bottom of its owner's library. So it's reusable removal, lifelink 2/3, swift instant speed removal on the adventure side. It's just super good. Murderous Rider is like a very, very good card. Ravenous Chupacabra, a classic, 2 and 2 black, 2/2, destroys a creature when it comes in. It's just good, especially in Reanimator. And Tragic Slip. Plenty of stuff's going to be dying in this deck. We have so much big stuff that combat. Plenty of things are going to be causing creatures to die. And Tragic Slip, like, you don't have to be the source of things dying. Like, you're in a 4-player game, and it's an instant. Things are going to die. People are going to remove other people's things. And then when they do, you're like, I might as well give that thing -13, -13 for 1. Seems pretty good. It's just good. Tragic Slip's always good. Even if you have no creatures in your deck and no removal, I think Tragic Slip is still great. Lands, I don't really do lands. They're just to taste. I just kind of threw in a couple packs that I had loaded on here. Win Con. So Sir Conrad's on here. Of course, all the big creatures that I can reanimate are win cons. We talked about Sir Conrad because obviously all of our mill turns into just tons of damage. Blood Chief's Ascension, though. Someone pointed this out in the chat, and I was like, yeah, that's the one that, like, drains people, right? And then I reread it, and I was like, oh, I don't remember it doing this. It's 1 black for an enchantment. At the beginning of each end step, if an opponent lost 2 or more life this turn, you may put a quest counter on Blood Chief's Ascension. Whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, if Blood Chief's Ascension has 3 or more counters on it, yeah, that player loses 2 and you gain 2. Excuse me? 3 counters? I was expecting like 6 counters, 7 counters. You play any source of mill and pretty much they lose. Maddening Cacophony, with this in play at 3 counters, you lose. Sorry. We've got board wipes. We've already done Life's Finale. It removes stuff. It's a dissection card. Fills the graveyard in 2 ways. It's very good. Someone brought up Necromantic Selection, though, because I was bringing up the idea of running board wipes that are more in theme with the deck, because I have an issue of just, like, throwing a Wrath of God in every white deck I run, when, like, in a token deck, there's probably better board wipes. So I'm trying to get over that habit. So I was like, if you guys know of any reanimation mill board wipes, let me know. Necromantic Selection's awesome. 4 and 3 black for a sorcery. Destroy all creatures, then return a creature card put into the graveyard this way to the battlefield. It's a zombie. Exile Necromantic Selection. Necrotic Hex, kind of same thing. 6 and a black for a sorcery. Each player sacrifices 6 creatures, then you create 6 2/2 black tapped zombies. Super good, especially since we run the 2 sources of giving our cards flash. So our board wipes become a lot more scary with those in here. And then we've got Mana Ramp. So Mana Ramp is just to taste, but there is an interesting aspect of the Mana Ramp in this deck that actually is going to be a video probably tomorrow or Tuesday that I'm working on. It's almost done. I'm just trying to figure out how to finish it off. Talking about 3-drop Mana Rocks if your commander costs 2, because then if your commander costs 2, I feel that 2-drop Mana Rocks become awkward, because then you're like, do I play the Mana Rock or do I play my commander? Which I don't like. So me and the chat came to the conclusion that 3-drop Mana Rocks are actually probably better in the 2-drop commanders. So that's why you're not seeing the Mind Stones, the Signets, stuff like that. If I'm wrong, please tell me I'm wrong in the comments. But that is just how I feel about it. It feels like I'm going to have so many turn 2s where I'm like, I want to play my commander, but I want to like have this mana ramp piece. When I could be like, I play my commander and then I play Coalition Relic after that, which feels way better. Coalition or Relic of Legends after my commander, way better. So that's the logic behind the 3-drop mana rocks, except for Soul Ring and Dark Ritual, because Dark Ritual will help us just rush out another 3-drop mana rock on turn 1, because it plays every other one of our mana rocks. You can play Dark Ritual and then play that afterwards. So that's why that's it. We've got Cloud Key. I really like Cloud Key just because we run a lot of creatures. We run 25 creatures, and I feel like in this deck, that's going to put in a lot more work than just adding 1 mana, making like 3 or 4 creatures we play in a turn cost 1 less. I just really like Cloud Key. It's becoming a card that I just like running in decks. Coalition Relic's just good. You get to put charge counters on it, add a bunch of mana. Crowded Crypt is one that somebody brought up that I had not seen that I really like. It's 2 and a black for an artifact. You can tap it to add 1 black. Whenever a creature you control dies, put a corpse counter on Crowded Crypt. Pay 4 and 2 black, tap it, sacrifice Crowded Crypt, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed for each corpse counter on it. It's just a 3-drop mana rock that turns into a bunch of zombies late game, which is fine in here. Dark Ritual, of course. Pawn of Ulamog, again, we're going to have plenty of stuff dying on our side and then turning those into little tokens that 1 are chump blockers and 2 can sack for mana is really good. Relic of Legends is great. I'm pretty sure we run quite a bit of Legends in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, yeah. And then our commander, 9. We run 9 Legends in here. I think that's plenty to get away with Relic of Legends. That seems fine. Soul Ring, of course. Solemn Simulacrum. I just like it in here. In Reanimator decks especially, I think Solemn's great. Victory Chimes is pretty cool. It's 3 colorless for an artifact. You can tap it. A player of your choice adds 1 waste. And you untap Victory Chimes during each other player's turn. So it's just a mana rock. It untaps during other people's turns, so you can use it during other people's turns for mana with our flash enablers. That's actually not useless. That's actually pretty useful. But the fact that you can give any player a waste, you can use it politically. You can be like, hey, if you need 1 more mana, I can help you out, but don't swing it my way. So this thing has like, puts in like quadruple work in this deck. It does so many different things that are good. But yeah, that's the deck. I really like it. If you want to take a look at some of the stats and stuff here, we've got the mana curve here. It peaks around 3, which is to be expected with the 2-drop commander. And then we've got more 7 and 6 drops than most decks, I would probably say, just because it's Reanimator, which I like. That's the divvy up of the colors, 3860, which I expected black was probably going to be the heavier color. We'll draw some test hands. There's one of them, Solemn, Murderous Rider, Sepulchral Reel, 4 lands. That's definitely a keep. Deal another hand. 1 land, all those, that's not a keep. 6 lands and a Crowded Crypt. Might actually keep that. I'm kind of a madman. Who knows? We'll do 5 hands. 4, a Dance of the Dead, Lorcan, and Halo Forger. That seems 100% keepable. And then 3 lands, a Mesmeric Orb, a Coalition Relic, Nazahal, Notion Rain. 100% keepable. Drawing into King Narfis and 2 Swamps. 100%. That seems great. So yeah, this deck looks like a lot of fun. It plays well. The hands are great so far. It looks like my dream deck. I know I keep saying that, but I'm being 100% genuine. I look at every card in this deck, and like I am like so excited to play this deck. I have probably half of it in my collection right now. I've been saving up like Reanimation themed cards just for like the deck that comes along that's going to be the deck it goes into. So I probably have half of these. If you want to pick up this deck right now, lands and all, you can buy this deck on TCG Player for $266. And if you didn't include lands in that, this is maybe a $100, $120 deck. So that's not nothing. And it's a 2-color deck. You can get away with doing 18 islands and 18 swamps. You know what I mean? So I think that this is budget-ish and very, very strong. Like, this looks like it's going to put in work. I'm extremely excited to play this card, or this deck. If you guys have any cards that you think should go in this deck, please comment them, because I want this to become like genuinely my dream deck. So if you have a card idea that should go in here, please comment it, because it might be a card that I'm like 100% that needs to go in here. At the moment, Phyrexian Portal and Whip of Erebos are the only 2 that are in my head that I'm like, I need to find spots in the deck, cards to take out for those. So if you see anything in here that you're like, you could take that out for Whip, you could take that out for Portal, Phyrexia, let me know, because that would help a lot. And yeah, just let me know if you liked the deck, guys. I really enjoyed playing this or building this with you guys, so appreciate you guys jumping in the stream. Subscribe, hit the bell, do all that stuff if you want to hop into the next stream. If you want to know when streams are happening, you want to build decks along with us, feel free to do that. If you want to submit a deck for Friday Night Deck Reviews, you can go over to subreddit, our subreddit at r/NixLotus. It should be on the screen and in the description. And you just have to submit a deck list as a post, and then you're in the queue. So yeah, if you're interested in that, do that. And yeah, that's it. I'm going to stop jaw wagging and get out of here. Much love. Go play some Magic, guys.